Hello, and welcome to Global Policy Forum's weekly vodcast. This week in Global Policy, the Security Council issued a presidential statement reflecting international criticism of Israel for its military attack on an international convoy delivering humanitarian aid to Gaza. The attack, which involved seizure of ships and passengers on the high seas, ironically came just 2 weeks after the Security Council passed a resolution about piracy off the coast of Somalia. The statement condemns the acts of violence that killed at least 9 passengers, and it calls on Israel to immediately release those detained. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has also called for a prompt investigation into the matter. Not surprisingly, the Security Council was unable to take stronger steps since the United States blocked action on a Council resolution. In other UN news, Philip Alston, the Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial, Summary or Arbitrary Executions, has delivered a report to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, which argues that the use of unmanned aerial drones should be restricted to regular military forces. Alston's report considers the CIA's use of unmanned drones for targeted killings in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and determines that this raises serious questions of legality. The report says that the life and death power of drones should be entrusted only to regular armed forces and not intelligence agencies, which lack transparency and accountability. It is unlikely that the Obama administration will alter its policy on drone use, however. Washington has increasingly relied on drones operated by the CIA and private military contractors to carry out its semi-secret campaign of airstrikes against insurgents in Pakistan. Also this week, the United Nations Environment Program released an important new report on the connection between food and the environment. The report explains that economic growth has led to a rise in the consumption of meat and dairy products. With the world's rising population placing heavier demands on agriculture, the current pattern of meat and dairy consumption is unsustainable. UNEP concludes that agri-production can have a greater negative impact on the environment than fossil fuel use, so a shift in diet towards vegan-style consumption is urgently necessary. In France, President Nicolas Sarkozy spoke at the 25th Africa-France Summit in Nice and declared that it was not normal that Africa has no permanent seat on the UN Security Council. He expressed France's support for greater African representation in global governance bodies such as the Security Council, the G20, and the World Bank Executive Board. However, at a summit focusing largely on economic ties, Sarkozy's gesture appears to be a diplomatic effort to woo African leaders and gain leverage with business interests. As Chinese and Indian investments increasingly flow into the African continent, old colonial powers like France are struggling to maintain their economic influence and market access. In other news, 2 major government leaders resigned this week. In Germany, President Horst Kohler resigned after coming under heavy criticism for suggesting that Germany maintains a military presence in Afghanistan to protect its economic interests. These remarks provoked uproar from German politicians, who would prefer that such official reasoning, however telling, never be made public. In Japan, Prime Minister Yukio Hatoyama stepped down only 8 months after coming to power. The Prime Minister is implicated in an election finance scandal. Most importantly, he failed to deliver on a key campaign pledge to remove an unpopular U.S. military base from the southern island of Okinawa. Both cases suggest that in some instances, military interests and economic pressures prevail over democratic accountability to the electorate. For insight and analysis on these issues and more, visit our website at www.globalpolicy.org. You can also follow us on Twitter.